what I tell new sellers and what I do myself, and that I showcase in, for example, like the 60K and 60 days from scratch series that I did, is what I call brands. My goal is just to get a foot in the door. I literally just want to open a wholesale account and become an authorized reseller. So when I'm pitching these brands, I'm not coming out of the gate saying, hey, we can help with your listings, we can run ads, we can optimize, we can do all these things. No, all I'm saying is, hey, I'm Corey. I have a retail business here in North Carolina and we'd love to carry your products. How do we go about getting set up with you guys as a dealer?
E-commerce is the greatest business opportunity of our generation.
What is up, people? Welcome back to another episode of the Ecom Unlimited podcast. It's your boy Kaj here with my co-host Josh.
What's going on, everybody?
And I'm not gonna lie, today the vibes are high, man. The sun is shining, the weather's finally getting warm, getting outside more, that vitamin D, so energy's high. We've got Corey Gannon back on the show for, I don't know, the fourth or third time, something like that. But before we get into the conversation with Corey, I wanted to quickly plug the sponsor of today's episode. That is SellerSnap. Guys, you hear us talk about SellerSnap all the time, and that's because they are simply the best repricer on the market. They help you stay in the buy box longer, avoid price wars, increase profits as well. So guys, if you're looking to up your game on Amazon and you're not using SellerSnap yet, I don't know what you're doing. Click the link in the description, sign up for a free trial of SellerSnap and increase your profits. All right, and with that, our guest for today is Corey Gannon. Corey, how are you doing, bro?
I'm doing good. Yeah, guys, thanks so much for having me back. I do think this is, like you said, maybe the third or fourth time that I've been on, but we always have a good time. We always talk Amazon, and usually we talk some other stuff too. So I'm looking forward to cutting it up today.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was thinking about this a couple days ago. I was actually your first student for teaching wholesale on Amazon. Back, what year was that, 2023?
I forgot about that.
Yeah, so I think that was, I want to say it was 2023, right? Because it was shortly after, it would have been like March, April-ish of 2023, so about 2 years ago.
Yep, and it was funny because I remember at that time, so Grant was the one who reached out to you, and you were like, yeah, I don't know if I really want to charge for my time yet or whatever. And so we got you before yesterday's price became not today's price.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. I remember, I think Grant was, and maybe I think it was really the three of you guys.
Yeah.
I think we're the first people I ever did like any sort of consulting or like one-on-one hourly type arrangement with. And yeah, it went well. And that led to obviously a lot of other things that we worked on in the past. So I think overall hopefully it was worth it.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Sure.
So that's one of the things where, guys, if you're on social media, just DM somebody and you never know what kind of business and friendship relationship is going to come out of that. But Corey,
Absolutely.
for our listeners who may be newer to our podcast, don't know who you are, aren't aware of your activity on X, Instagram, YouTube, all that stuff, just give us like the 1-2 minute background, who you are, how you got into this business, and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, my name is Corey Gannon. I started out in corporate IT sales. So I graduated college in 2017, and it was right around college graduation that I discovered selling on Amazon. I didn't know it was a thing. I had sold some stuff on eBay. I had sold some stuff locally. But I really got deep into the selling on Amazon world. And really back in 2017, I started off by going to thrift stores, flipping used books on Amazon on the side, right? Because I'm working full-time for IBM at the time. And then slowly shifted into online arbitrage, and then slowly shifted about a year and a half after doing arbitrage, shifted over into wholesale, right? So started taking a more just business focused approach to the business, just started portraying myself as more of a business as opposed to just an Amazon seller. So started wholesale in January of 2019, was just cold calling a ton of brands, ton of distributors, and really just have been doing that exact same thing for now the last, I guess, 6.5 years in terms of wholesale, 8 years total selling on Amazon. And along the way, I've met great people like you and like Josh. I have since built out other businesses, mainly on the coaching and consulting side. So between the Wholesale Network, which is our community, which you guys are a part of, and the Wholesale Challenge, which we hosted 3 times over the last 2 years, I've coached over 1,100 total people in the Amazon space on the wholesale model. And we've gotten a lot of really good feedback and a lot of really good, testimonials and students that have come out of that. So that's kind of my last 8 years in a nutshell. And we can go deeper into any of that if you guys want.
And kind of just give an idea for the viewers, how much are you usually selling per year, if you had a guess?
Yeah, so in 2024, I think we were just over 3 million. Really every year, I think lifetime, I'm about 15 million total.
Wow.
But for the last 3 or 4 years, we've been like 3 or 4 million a year. Haven't really grown past 4 million a year. But that part of that's intentional just because I feel like the business, I like where it is. I don't necessarily want to take on a ton of additional debt to keep doubling down on it. If anything, I'd rather keep my Amazon business the way it is and then continue to build out all the other things we're doing, whether it's the wholesale network community, whether it's the the deals that we're doing with partners and affiliates and all this other fun stuff that we're doing on the side.
Yeah, that sounds.
And on that topic too, where the business is at right now, because I think this is good to give people like an idea of like where the business can get to. So Criselda, she's been with you for pretty much the whole time, right? She's your head of operations, your VA.
Yep. Yeah. So she's been with me since I think November of 2019. So I remember, like I said, I started wholesale in January of 2019. And really that whole year of 2019 was spent learning the business, making the calls, in the trenches, in the weeds, doing pretty much all the work myself. And it was really towards the end of 2019 when I sat down and said, hey, I'm still doing a lot of the admin busy work, when in reality, I should be spending most of my time making the calls and putting the orders together. So that's when I went off and found Criselda and hired her. And she, like you said, I mean, she's been with me pretty much that whole time. So for about the last 5.5 years now, and have pretty much taught her the entire business from the ground up. And yeah, she's my right hand. She kind of runs the whole thing now, which is great.
Yeah. And so that's why I wanted to bring up her name, because as far as I'm aware, she runs like most of the business. So in terms of your time right now, you're not actually putting a lot of time into running that $3 million operation. Most of that is, obviously, it's not like you just started this. So you already have the established relationships. I'm sure you're selling a lot of replens. Maybe there's some seasonal stuff, maybe some new items here and there. But because of the amount of time you've had in this and the staff you have, that Amazon operation, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's pretty much automated at this point with your team and processes.
Yeah, exactly. So I really don't spend any time on it at all day to day, aside from, once a week or once every 2 weeks, I'll just call our best suppliers and our sales reps there and just get on the phone with them and just continue building rapport, continue building that relationship. But as far as the day to day of sourcing and placing the orders and tracking shipments and all that stuff, I don't do any of that. I mean, honestly, I haven't. It's funny. I feel bad when people inside either like our wholesale network community or our Wholesale Accelerator community, I feel bad when they ask me a shipping question or like, hey, how should I prep this shipment or how should I ship this shipment? I'm like, I have no idea, because I have not personally created a shipment in like 3 years. But that's why we have people like you and like Josh in there who can answer the more technical questions. And I mean, we have Criselda in there as well. She's the one in the weeds, right, who actually can give knowledgeable answers, where I'm more of the, hey, this is how, from a high level, how you structure things and how you approach things, et cetera. So that's kind of where I feel like I add value.
Yeah.
Wait,
and it's funny because, sorry, Josh, you got it.
No, go ahead. You can finish your thought.
I was just going to say it's funny because I'm much more in the weeds in the day to day on our Amazon business than you are right now. But it's funny because even with my ops manager, there's still things where it's like, if I had to do that, not really sure
it wouldn't get done.
It would not get done. And I know it's the same experience for Josh too. So obviously, he's a full-time PT, so there's even more things in the business. But it's funny, like as you grow it, as you scale, like you actually want that to happen, because if you are doing all the things in your business yourself, then you are the bottleneck. And if you can get to the point where you've handed off more and more things to your team, that means you're actually growing a legit operation.
That's a really good point, right? Because what I would kind of be a little hesitant if for example, if I paid someone for coaching, or even if I'm just getting advice from someone, right? And I ask them like a very specific, very nuanced question about their business, and they're someone that claims to have a decent sized business or to be big in business or whatever, and they can answer that very specific question. A lot of times I'm like, wait, why? Like, why is it that why did they have that answer? Why did they not have to go to their team or their VA or their head of operations? Like, why are they still the one doing that task? So if anything, it's almost like if you don't have those answers, a lot of times you are perceived as more professional and at a higher level because you're like, well, that's actually not my responsibility. So I don't have that answer, but I can go get it for you.
Yes.
Right. So I think that's like an important distinction.
Well said.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So we're going to ask you your first question here.
Okay.
If you were to start from scratch with a new account, no previous knowledge of Amazon, and unlimited money, what are your next steps?
Buy crypto.
So, yeah. So if I have no previous Amazon knowledge and I'm starting an Amazon business from scratch, I'm starting a brand new Amazon selling account from scratch. Is this assuming that I'm doing wholesale, or is it kind of just up to me to do whatever I want?
Again, you have unlimited money, so you can do whatever you want.
Okay. And then one more question as far as clarification. Do I have a business background or not? Like, am I me, or am I just kind of like the average run of the mill, maybe 30-year-old guy who's just kind of interested in this thing? Because I think that's an important distinction, and I'll explain why.
Sure. I think you definitely have some business background.
Okay. And the reason I asked that question is because, in fact, somebody asked me this question, same exact question earlier this week. And the advice that I typically give people is if you're brand new to selling on Amazon, and this is kind of me answering this question the same way. So if I was brand new and I had no business experience, I had no entrepreneurial background, but I have a lot of money and I'm jumping into this thing, I would tell that person, do not jump into wholesale first. Start with arbitrage, because the stakes are a lot lower and you're going to learn. There's a much quicker feedback loop, so you can learn a lot quicker. However, if that same person, right, and so to, again, go back to your question, right, if I had some business experience and I had some entrepreneurial experience and obviously I have money, like you said, then I would not hesitate in any way to jump right into wholesale, right? Because I think if you have that business experience, you can kind of skip that arbitrage, just general business learning curve, and get right into the weeds of how wholesale works on Amazon. So to answer your question, if I had that little bit of experience and I'm starting an Amazon business from scratch and I've got a lot of funds, the first thing that I would do is I would hire somebody like me or like Kaj, who knows what they're doing, who's been there, done that, who can help me avoid a lot of pitfalls, and who can look over my shoulder as I'm going through the business, because that's going to save me $10, $20, $50, $100,000 in my first year in terms of mistakes that I didn't make, right? And then from there, to get more tactical with it, I would simply start storefront stalking other wholesale sellers, figuring out what brands are they carrying, and then calling those brands and either trying to open a wholesale account directly with those same brands that are clearly already working for other people, or I would ask the brands who their distributors are in my specific area. And I would do that 10 to 20 times per day. I would basically find 10 to 20 brands per day. I would call those 10 to 20 brands, and I would repeat that process for 2 to 3 weeks. And after 2 to 3 weeks, I could continue doing that outreach and continue finding a ton of additional leads, because that works really well. But chances are after 2 to 3 weeks, I'm going to have quite a few leads that are qualified, that are ready to work with me, that I can go ahead and spend money on. And again, being newer, even though you said I have unlimited funds, I don't want to keep my foot on that gas pedal and just keep buying, because I'm not yet able to make a mistake that I've learned from. So I'd find, those first 3 to 4 brands that I can work with, buy from them, learn from them, replenish a couple of times, and then repeat the process, because now I've got a little bit of a track record and a little bit of a better idea of what exactly it is that I'm doing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. What does your outreach kind of look like in terms of how to keep track of it all? There's like so many different, especially in the beginning, individuals can be like reaching out to so many suppliers. They don't know if they're nagging them. Like, what does that kind of look like?
Yeah, so I try to keep the outreach super simple, and I like to keep it short and sweet. So I know something you guys do really well at, and a lot of sellers are pivoting to this model, is working directly with brands to add value to them as more of a partner, right? Not just selling their products, but also running ads and helping them with their listings and doing all the value added things. But for a newer seller, that's not a pitch that you want to make right off the bat, right? What I tell new sellers, and what I do myself, and that I showcase in, for example, like the 60K and 60 days from scratch series that I did, is when I call brands, my goal is just to get a foot in the door. I'd literally just want to open a wholesale account and become an authorized reseller. So when I'm pitching these brands, I'm not coming out of the gate saying, hey, we can help with your listings, we can run ads, we can optimize, we can do all these things. No, all I'm saying is, hey, I'm Corey. I have a retail business here in North Carolina, and we'd love to carry your products. How do we go about getting set up with you guys as a dealer, right? Because that's so much less friction than pitching them on, hey, here's how we can, be your partner, when they've never even talked to you before and never met you before. So it's a much easier way in the door. And then you can pitch those services down the line once you have a better relationship with the actual brand.
Yeah. And then what kind of sizing in terms of PO, especially in the beginning, might people expect?
So it really varies. It varies brand by brand, supplier by supplier. I mean, some brands and distributors will have a no MOQ, and MOQ stands for minimum order quantity. So you can spend $10 with them, you can spend $10,000, it doesn't matter. Some of them will have an MOQ, but a lot of sellers think that the MOQs are going to be higher than they actually are. A big limiting belief of a lot of new wholesale sellers is that, oh, well, if I get into wholesale, I need 20 grand or 50 grand to drop on products. And that's not the case. A lot of suppliers, in fact, all my best suppliers, have a very low MOQ or none at all. And when I say low, I mean like $100 or $200 or $500. So the barrier to entry is not as high as a lot of people make it seem.
Yeah, often the more difficult part is actually opening the account, not necessarily the MOQ.
Exactly.
Or finding if it's an account that's easy to open, maybe the MOQ is low, but there's a huge catalog, and then you actually have to find what's profitable. So it's like it can kind of rotate between those things. And then sometimes it's like, oh, this is super profitable, but okay, now here's the 50K MOQ. So it might rotate. That's
a good point.
How much stock are you looking to get when you find a product that works?
So if it's the first time that I'm carrying a product, now there's a couple of factors that'll go into it. So if this is like an opportunity buy where, hey, this is the only time I'm going to be able to buy this product at this price. So in those cases, I will typically stock up and buy maybe 60 to 90 days worth. Even though I've never carried the product before, even though it's technically untested, I'm experienced enough at this point to look at the data and make that judgment call and say, well, hey, it doesn't make sense for me to buy 3 weeks worth of inventory to test this product because this is the only time I'm getting access to it. So I've either got to buy 90 days worth or none. And based on the data and based on the profit and everything I'm seeing, I'm confident enough to pull the trigger, right? So there's a difference between these opportunity buys and then products that are just kind of evergreen. You can get them whenever you need them for the most part. And in the case of those products, I'll buy usually about 30 days worth as a test, see how it goes, make sure it's profitable, and then I'll come back and order usually about 60 days worth is what we shoot for.
Gotcha. Okay. Very cool. And so let's just say, again, kind of going back, if you had like no previous knowledge, new account, unlimited money, how quickly are you going to be hiring a VA? Is that after you close a couple accounts? Is that before you close any accounts? What would that look like?
Yeah, so in that scenario, I would not be hiring a VA until I've created so much opportunity for myself that I start dropping the ball. So I'm not going to hire a VA until I've got so many leads and so many products to go through that now I'm taking 2 or 3 days to respond to leads, right? Or I'm taking 2 or 3 days to submit supplier applications. Or I've got this big backlog of products to look through, but I don't know how to prioritize because I've got 100 other things going on. So again, I would almost create problems for myself. And then once I've created problems for myself by just taking so much action, then I would figure out, okay, now where do I need to plug in a VA to kind of plug some of these leaks or make what I'm doing more efficient so that I can focus on the higher level tasks, which is calling suppliers, not even finding suppliers, really just calling suppliers and buying products, placing orders.
Gotcha. And then people in your community, where do you see people needing a VA the most?
So as far as in the community, and I think this really just applies in general, I mean, I think people need a VA the most when they get to the position that I just mentioned, right? It's typically those people who are the hustlers, who are the go-getters, who jump into this business and they just take a ton of action and they don't get analysis paralysis and they don't second guess themselves, and they're 2, 3, 4 weeks into that process and they look up and they're like, dang, I've made hundreds of calls. I've got all these leads. I've got all these products. But now I've got all this administrative burden that I've created from my outreach and from my action taking. So a lot of times they'll come to us and say, well, hey, what should I have a VA do, or what should I hire them for? And usually the advice that I give is, well, have them start filling out your supplier applications, right? Because think about it. If you're doing a lot of outreach, you're getting a lot of applications. Those applications can take 10, 15, 20 minutes to fill out. And it's one of those tasks that it's important, but it's not urgent, right? They need to get done in order for you to get access. And it's super boring. And it's super boring, and it's super tedious, and it's not something that you as the business owner need to be spending your time doing. So that's usually one of the first things I have them look at is, well, hey, let's start getting the supplier applications off your plate. Let's start getting email, just inbox management off your plate. Because think about, Josh, even for you and Kaj, how many emails do you guys get on a daily basis that are even worthy of your response, right? Much less you taking the time to read. So that's been a big unlock for me, and something that I teach people do as well, is that, hey, when you just get a VA to handle your email, right? Like handle your inboxes. One, so that opportunities don't slip through the cracks, and two, so that when opportunities do come along, you can capitalize on them quickly. You don't look bad, like you look bad when it's been 11 days after receiving that email and you're like, oh, this is a really good opportunity, but I've just been so in the weeds that I haven't had time to reply. And then you go to reply to that opportunity and they're like, hey, sorry, it's already passed, right? You took too long to reply. So I feel like a lot of those opportunities slip through the cracks when you don't have a good VA or you don't have a good assistant who can kind of keep their eye on the ball of that type of stuff.
Yeah, I realize that's super important. And like, I kind of have talked with Kaj too about like him, like some of the emails that will be forwarded from his business account will get forwarded to like my personal account. Yeah. And I was like, we might need to like cut back on some of these emails because there was just too many, there was just too many. It was just, it was a lot, especially when in the earlier wholesale days when we were getting tons of emails all the time.
Well, and even like you could have your VA go into your inbox and just unsubscribe from everything. And I mean everything, right? Like every newsletter.
I had him do that. Yeah.
Yeah, every newsletter, every piece of marketing.
Well, because especially think about transitioning from OA to wholesale, right?
Oh, yeah. Especially if you weren't using like a burner email for the promotions and stuff.
And in OA, you want to get those emails because that's where the coupons come from. So like part of it, first it was like, all right, manage all of the website emails. And then it was like, once we stopped doing OA, it was like, get rid of all of the website emails.
Yeah, no, I get that completely.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the YouTube series that you did. What was it? 60K in 60 days? I forget what you called it.
Yeah. So it was 60K in 60 days from scratch. So that was the goal. We didn't quite get there just because, again, I kind of underestimated how much time it would take to ramp up. So we did end up getting, I think we placed like 5 or 6 POs with 4 or 5 different suppliers during that series. But it took a good 2 to 3 to 4 weeks to really get the momentum. It's almost like the first 2 to 3 weeks were just heavy on making calls, grinding. And then it was like weeks 3, 4, 5, 6, and onwards. That's when we really got the vast majority of the results, because wholesale it's like a snowball, right? Like you're pushing a snowball up a hill. It builds in size, and then you get to the top of the hill and you start rolling it down the other side. And it continues to build and get bigger, but now you're not having to really push it, right? Momentum is what's carrying it forward. So wholesale is just like that, right? A lot of upfront work to build momentum, and then you can kind of take your foot off the gas a little bit in terms of outreach and whatnot, and still have tons of good opportunities coming in from the work that you already did.
So how much did you spend in total from those new suppliers that you contacted?
Yeah, so I think that because, again, the goal was 60K in revenue. I think we did like 36 or like 42K in revenue, something like that. And so spend on that would be roughly 55% of that. So if you talk 30, let's just say 32. Yeah, so like probably like 17, 18K in spend, yeah.
Which is very good. And I think the point of the whole point of that series was showing someone who's just started, like, hey, this is what's possible if you just hammer the phones, aggressively follow up, get some orders in. So for someone who's like, going back to Josh's question, it's like, okay, I want to get into wholesale, whether or not it's a lot of money or a little bit of money, whatever it is, like if they have some money set aside, if they're able to maybe leverage a loan, leverage debt, however they're going to go about the funding side of it, but they're willing to put in the work, like within that first 2 to 3 months, you can build a business from literally zero to having 30, 40, 50K in revenue that, again, just stacks. So it's like, and I mean, at that run rate, that's a $500,000 business that you built in 90 days, which is insane to think about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and the point, again, I did it just to prove the point that, hey, you can be, because that's part of the series. Part of what I wanted to do is just portray myself as a brand new seller and just not give myself any of my advantages or my social media or the stuff that I already have. So when I was calling these brands and these distributors during the series, I was positioning myself as someone who, you know, not is necessarily brand new, but it's just like, hey, I'm just a guy named Corey that has a retail business in North Carolina, right? I would never like plug my social media or anything like that, just to make it as realistic as possible. And I wish I used to have the stats on the whiteboard here next to me. I've shared them before, but the numbers were actually surprisingly simple. I think we contacted, I'm again, don't quote me word for word on these numbers, but it was something along the lines of we contacted maybe like 42 or 52 total brands. Of those 40 or 50, we got, I think it was like 10 applications. Of those 10 applications, 9 of 10 got approved. And of those 9 accounts that we opened, I think we ordered from 4 or 5 of them. And then one of those 4 or 5 we placed a couple of orders with during that series, right? So again, just looking at it like a funnel, we made 40 or 50 calls. We didn't make 4 or 500 or 4 or 5,000. So the point was to really just illustrate how if you just take a consistent, methodical approach and just do it every day for like an hour a day is pretty much all I did, then yeah, like you said, within 60 days, you have the foundation for what could be a $500,000 business in year one. And for the folks, I realized too, we didn't really do a good job of, we probably need to make that series into a playlist on my YouTube channel, but you could go on my YouTube and it's just at Corey Ganem. And I think the first episode in the series is titled, I locked myself in a room until I made 60K. I think that's the name, like that's episode 1.
That's a fire thumbnail.
So go and find that on my channel. It's a couple months back, but it was a lot of fun.
That's funny because there's a video that keeps popping up in my feed of it's in the thumbnails like I locked myself in a room until I made $1 million or something like that.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of them like that.
Yeah, I remember when it first popped up, it was at like a couple thousand views, and now it's over 1 million views.
Yep, I saw one as like 1.2, same exact title, so I'm sure probably the same one.
Yeah, the algorithm wants me to watch it so bad, but I'm not clicking on it.
Yeah.
All right, switching topics a little bit. What's been your biggest loss in the business?
Yeah, biggest loss, I would say probably, let's see. It was it Christmas? Like, so Christmas of it was the first year I lived in Charlotte. So what was that, 2022? 2022. So Christmas of 2022. So as you guys know, when it comes to seasonal products, right, especially Christmas products, a lot of times like Christmas orders have to be placed and a deposit has to be paid in like June, right, for a lot of seasonal products. So this was, I guess, June or July of 2022. There was a lot of candy and like food products that were Christmas seasonal that we had identified from our supplier as being products that we wanted to go deep on for that Q4. So we placed the orders in June. We did the best research we could have done based on, seasonal trends from years past. And what I really dropped the ball on is I didn't stay on top of the supplier to make sure the stuff was going to land in time to not only, land in time before Christmas, but then you've got to get it to the prep center. They've got to prep it. They've got to send it to Amazon. Receiving times are longer during Q4. All the things that you guys know that we deal with. And, come to find out this Christmas inventory really, it got delayed. So it didn't even get to the States until it's like November 1st or something like that.
No. Yeah, that's a disaster.
And then it had to go, then the supplier had to process it. And the supplier was on like a 1 to 2 week lead time because of how busy they were for the holiday. So bottom line is we didn't even get this stuff into FBA until like December 7th or December 10th, something like that. So, I mean, needless to say, most of our stuff was in FC transfer during like the peak days and weeks of Christmas. So we ended up having to either just dispose of or liquidate. It was something like $15,000 worth of just chocolate and candy, seasonal Christmas stuff that just didn't make it in time, right? Oh. So that really sucked. And then another big loss too was there was a
clip it. That's the intro.
I've got plenty of them.
That really sucked.
Sucked.
Yeah. No, I've got plenty of them too. I mean, it happens, right? I mean, I've been doing this for like 8 years, so you're gonna have some losses. But there's another one. So it was a brand that we were selling, one of the first brand directs that I ever got, and still good relationship with them to this day. But they approached me and one of their other sellers who I was also friends with, because me and this other guy had always communicated with the brand. In fact, me and him had approached the brand together in the past about, hey, we'd love to be exclusive on your main SKU, right? The brand didn't go for it, but they remembered that conversation, and they actually came back to us about a year later and said, hey, how would you guys like to launch an exclusive SKU for us? And this was back at this point, this was 2.5 years ago at this point. So, we had the conversation with them. We ran the numbers. The brand's big on Amazon. They've got a good footprint. They're big in their niche. So we said, yeah, let's do it. And so this was a product that we were supposed to launch. So it's, again, more of a Christmas, not necessarily Christmas, but like colder months seasonal product. So we were supposed to launch this in, I'd say, about October of 22. And so that way it would get to FBA in plenty of time to right into peak season, start building those reviews, and then ride that momentum through the summer right into the next peak season where we'd really crush it, because we'd have a lot of reviews at that point. And come to find out, there was manufacturing delays, and the container didn't arrive to the States until like June or July of the following year. So we ended up having to launch in the absolute dead season, like worst possible season you could launch this product. We launched it. It didn't do very well. Bottom line, we still have about $22,000 or $25,000 worth of inventory sitting at the manufacturer's warehouse in Michigan that we've already paid for in full, and has been sitting there for the past, I guess, year and a half at this point, because we've been trying to do everything possible to spur the growth of this listing, get it to sell. And at this point, we've just concluded that it's a dud. The product sucks. Even though the brand's solid and they have a lot of good products, this one was a complete dud. So we actually had a conversation with the brand recently and have come to an agreement with them where they're actually going to buy the stock back from us, but over the course of 90 days, because their reasoning to us was like, hey, this was our idea, like we feel responsible for it, so we're going to buy it back off you. But because it's our dead season, give us, like, we're going to pay you over 90 days, but we'll pay you at cost. So, did I technically lose money? I guess no, because we sold a couple hundred units at Amazon over the last year or two and made money on those, and then we're selling the rest back to the brand at cost. But as far as opportunity cost and mental bandwidth spent on that, lots and lots and lots of time and energy and calls and hours. And then the time, like the opportunity cost of money, I mean, you're talking 20 to 30 grand that was tied up for coming up on 3 years, or really 3 years now. And we could have 5x that money over that time easily. So that's just, again, another kind of pitfall. If anything, in hindsight, it probably wasn't the best opportunity. It was probably more of a shiny object for me, but big learning experience, and it is what it is.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to dive a little bit deeper there. Have you had any sort of like, that kind of distractions from your business where you were like, oh, look at this guy making so much money. Oh, maybe I should do this for a little bit. And you didn't really really hardcore focus on Amazon?
Yeah. Oh yeah. All the time. I mean, when I first went full time with Amazon, which was when I quit my corporate job at IBM, I moved back to North Carolina, and my plan, which in hindsight, it's so funny to think about, wasn't a good plan, but I was like, oh yeah, well, I'm going to, Amazon's going to be my main thing, but I'm also going to be doing these other 2 or 3 things, right? I had a business where I was converting VHS tapes to DVDs. I was like flipping stuff locally from like yard sales on eBay. And Amazon was like definitely like my main thing, but I was just pulled in too many different directions. And I feel like every couple of years I make that same mistake where I kind of say like, oh yeah, things are going good. Let's go do something completely different. When in reality, it's like, well, if things are going good, you should just do more of those things that are going good and that are working. But I feel like that's kind of the entrepreneur's curse, where you just have shiny object syndrome. It's just everybody gets it after a while. And you kind of got to rein it in.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I did hear something about that Hormozy said not too long ago. He's actually making so much money now that he actually finds himself not getting shiny object syndrome like anymore as much as he did like early on. Because he was like, dude, I used to be so distracted all the time, which I thought was kind of interesting. I was like, wow.
Well, it's probably because he knows it's like there's probably not many more things I could do that are going to be more profitable than what I'm doing now. So like, why even bother?
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah.
That's such a good point to get to.
Yeah, definitely.
Kosh, do we ask this last question? I think you asked that one already.
I totally forgot. I just hit the mute button on my mic. I had one more question about that brand that you had the inventory sitting at for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So was it just not selling at all on Amazon, or has it just been selling so slowly that it didn't even make sense to like trickle that inventory into FBA?
So it's selling so slowly that we would be paying more in storage costs than we'd actually be making, because we've done everything that we can possibly do. Now we're down to the point of, all right, well, let's just fire sale this thing and just get some cash back. And we're priced so low that like, and it's still not selling, that it's just like, what's the point, right? So we had to go to the brand and say like, you have to buy this back. We have to work something out. Part of it is because, I mean, Chinese sellers have just really infiltrated this niche and just killed it. So the model, the particular like variation or model that we're selling. So the brand has a lot of really successful, really high volume products in this niche, in this subcategory. The model that we're selling is like, it's like their best seller, but it's a portable version of it. But ours is more expensive. And what we're realizing is that like, okay, the portability wasn't as big of a selling point as we thought. It doesn't justify the extra, $10, $15, however much higher it's priced. So people are just going to the original, which has the most reviews, which is the best seller, which, is the one that has the most social proof, and just buying that one. So, what we're telling the brand is like, we really can't lower it anymore. We've done everything that we can do from like an optimization and that standpoint. So it's just like some products are just duds, right? Yeah. There's nothing you can do to save them. And this is one of those.
Got it. Okay. All right. Switching topics again, different question. What is the most annoying or frustrating FAQ that you get asked as a seasoned Amazon coach, where it's like, man, I just wish if they would have searched that on YouTube or asked ChatGPT instead of asking me?
Yeah, so it's not so much like a question that could be answered on YouTube or ChatGPT. It's more so when people ask me to vet certain suppliers, which I happily do, right? Like that's one of the things that we specifically offer within the wholesale network is like, hey, you guys if you're questionable about a supplier, you want us to take a look at a supplier or a PO, right? That's something I've done a million times. I'll look over somebody's PO. Hey, buy this. Hey, don't buy this, and here's why. But I think the question I get that bugs me is when somebody says like, hey, can you verify this supplier for me? I say, yeah, sure. And I look at it, and it's just got every red flag in the book that you could possibly think of when it comes to a supplier. And like, I can't tell you how many people, in fact, one of them is like, for example, Manu, right? Who's one of our wholesale network members. This was a while ago, but he had me look over one of his POs. It was going to be like a $20,000, $25,000 PO. And he's like, hey, can you just look at this for me and make sure that I'm crossing my T's, dotting my I's, that everything looks good here. So I said, yeah, sure. So I'm looking at the PO, and it was like a cosmetics brand that's ranked like literally number 10 in beauty. It's like one of the top 10 best-selling products on Amazon.
Automatic.
And he was getting like you look at the listing, and one, it's transparency enabled, right? Two, there's like one seller and the brand on the listing, so there's only like two sellers. So like, again, lots of just red flags on the ASIN level, red flags at the brand level. And then I'm like, well, who is this supplier? Like, who are you getting this from? And I look them up, And of course the supplier's name is like, XYZ Wholesale or something like that. And I was like, dude, you should call the brand. Like, I don't think this supplier's authorized. In fact, I'd be willing to bet every dime I have that this is not a legit supplier. But I was like, call the brand and ask them. Like, I want you to hear it from them. So what he does is he calls the brand, and then he messages me like a day later. He's like, hey man, I'm so glad you said something, because I called the brand and they had never heard of this XYZ Wholesale. And when I told them that the wholesaler was offering the units with the transparency labels on them, the rep at the brand is like, how the heck did they get those? In fact, he was like thanking me profusely for letting him know about this wholesaler and these units that are out there in the wild, and he's going to look into it and get to the bottom of it. And what he ended up doing, which was smart, is he tried to kind of parlay that into a relationship with the brand. He's like, well, hey, yeah, I'm glad I was able to catch this for you guys. Well, hey, how about I just work directly with you guys instead of potentially these shady wholesalers over here? And now it didn't work. He didn't get in the door, but the guy heard him out, right? He listened to his pitch. He was like, sounds good, but we're already so big. Like, if you're not spending $1 million a month, it doesn't make sense, right? Like, that was kind of the response, but it's like he shot his shot, so why not? But again, it's just one of those things where, to me, there's 100 red flags on that PO and on that supplier, and I think it just took pointing it out to him for him to get that. But two, I think it was also a lot of times people get blinded by, well, hey, this opportunity is really good, it's X ROI, and these are great products, the volume's there, everything looks good, and so they get so kind of pulled into wanting to put that deal together that they get blinded by all the red flags, and then they just proceed anyways. So it's when people just kind of ignore the obvious red flags that kind of irks me.
Yeah, that's a really good answer to that. But at the same time, that's also, and like you said, you'll happily do that because that's one of the biggest values about having a mentor in the space, not only teaching you how to make money, but also helping prevent you from wasting money. Like you said, that was a $20,000, $25,000 PO that would have just probably gone straight to fake inventory that he wouldn't have been able to get back. And then it's like, now you're just out 20 grand when you could have had someone look it over and saved it. And it's the same thing, even like thinking about the OA days for us, where it's like, the temptation is to look for reasons why you should buy it, when in reality, you should always be looking for reasons why you shouldn't buy it. And especially in the beginning, where it's like maybe you've been making those phone calls for a couple weeks or a month, and it's like, okay, I've only placed one small order. Opportunity. Yeah, you're like, oh, I really want to be making more money. I just want to spend some money, and then you like start getting antsy, and then you like, that's when you end up making a bad buy, and that's when it's so important to have someone kind of looking over your shoulder to be like, okay, like you should not spend your money on that because you're going to get burned.
Yep, that's a great point. No, and I think Garrett was the first person I ever heard give that tip that way, where he says, look for reasons not to buy a product as opposed to reasons to buy a product. And if you really genuinely can't find a reason, you can't come up with a reason not to buy it, then it's probably a pretty good buy, right? Whereas if you're trying to come up with reasons why you should do it, or try to justify why it's a good deal or why it's a good investment, then it's probably not.
Yep. Well said. Well said. Okay. Last thing to wrap up here. So you've mentioned the wholesale network. We've talked about the wholesale network plenty of times on this podcast. People are aware of that. But something that's new is the Wholesale Accelerator. So just talk to people about the Wholesale Accelerator, what's going on in that community right now, how it's different from the network, and then we can wrap up with that.
Yeah, definitely. So the inspiration behind the Wholesale Accelerator. Now, the Wholesale Accelerator is hosted in Skool, right? Which is our only community hosted in Skool, because the Wholesale Network is hosted in Discord. But we wanted something, because like, how many people come to us and are like, hey, we want to learn from you, or we want to get involved, but they're brand new to Amazon, or they just saw a YouTube video, but they want to learn more, but they're not willing to invest in the Wholesale Network, which is a pricier investment, right? So we sat down one day and we're like, all right, well, we need something that we can kind of help. We need a way to help people who are just newer, right? That's really what it comes down to, because we don't even accept people into the Wholesale Network that are new, or especially that are brand new. So, all right, how do we create a community that can cater to these newer sellers, which led us to creating the Wholesale Accelerator. And our whole kind of ethos behind the accelerator is to become the straightest line path to wholesale PO number one. All right. So whether you're brand new to selling on Amazon, you just found this podcast today and you're like, I want to try this out. Or if you're if you're not new to Amazon, if you've been selling for a while, but you're like, hey, I want to dip my toes into wholesale, but I want to do it in a quite honestly a cheap way, right? Right now the accelerator is like $35 a month. The wholesale network is multiple thousands of dollars. So if you just want a much lower entry into the business, along with support and access to me and Kaj and other folks inside the community, as well as a 3-week course and resources and lots of good stuff in addition to it, then that's who the accelerator is for, right? And folks can check that out. I mean, it's, as of the time of this recording, it's $35 a month. So you're talking barely over $1 a day. Now we will be raising that, right? So we'll be raising that soon, but not significantly. So the website there is just wholesaleaccelerator.io. So people can go there to check that out, and that'll just redirect to the Skool community, and you can join right there on that website.
Yep, and the link for that will be
awesome.
in the description of the podcast as well. Oh, I think we had some lag.
Corey, we're good. Oh, we have some mega lag going on right now. I think we're just like interrupting each other just back and forth. But that's okay.
Josh, it's all
Corey,
you. Land the
where
plane.
can people go and find you? Holy hell. I can't, dude. Oh my gosh. All right, Corey, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, so best place to find me would probably be on my podcast. So it's called The Corey Ganem Show. I've had both Kaj and Josh on for, I think it was episode 104 or 105 that I had both of you guys on. And we kind of just talked the state of Amazon wholesale and where the industry is headed. So guys, check out The Corey Ganem Show on YouTube, on every podcast platform, specifically episode, I think 104 with Josh and Kaj.
Yeah, guys, links will be in this description. And thank you for listening. Make sure to leave a comment if you have any topics you want us to discuss in the future. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you're on Spotify, follow the podcast so you can stay updated on all of our new content. And we will see you on the next one.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Peace.